Chapter 3 Burrow. Ron breathed Harry, creeping to the window and pushing it up so they could talk through the bars. Ron, how did you what the? Harry's mouth fell open as the full impact of what he was saying hit him. Ron was leaning out of the back window of an old turquoise car which had parked in mid-air. Grinning at Harry from the front seat were Fred and George, Ron's elder twin brothers. "All right, Harry," asked George. "What's been going on?" said Ron. "Why haven't you been answering my letters? I have asked you to stay about 12 times. And then Dad came home and said you have got an official warning for using magic in front of muggles." "It wasn't me. And how did he know? He worked for the ministry and Ron, you know we are not supposed to do spell outside school." "You should talk," said Harry, staring at the floating car. "Oh, this doesn't count," said Ron. "We are only borrowing this. It's Dad's. We didn't enhance it. Doing magic in front of those muggles you lived with." "I told you I didn't. It will take too long to explain now. Look, tell me at Hogwarts that the Dursleys having locked me up and won't let me come back, and obviously I can't magic myself out because the minstrel think that the second spell I have done in 3 days. So stop gibbering," said Ron. "We have come to take you home with us. But you can't magic me out either." "We don't need to," said Ron, jerking his head towards the front seat and grinning. "You forgot who I have got with me." "Tie that around the bars," said Fred, throwing the end of the rope to Harry. "If the Dursleys wake up, I'm dead," said Harry as he tied the rope tightly around the bars and Fred covered up the car. "Don't worry," said Fred, and stand back. Harry moved back into the shadow next to Hedwig, who seemed to have realized how important this was and kept still and silent. The cars revved louder and louder, and suddenly, with a crunching noise, the bars were pulled clean out of the window as Fred drove straight up in the air. Harry ran back to the window to see the bars dragging a few feet above the ground. Having Ron hoisted them up into the car, Harry listened anxiously. There was no sound from Dursley's bedroom. The cars were safely in the back seat with Ron. Fred reversed as close as possible to Harry's window. "Get in," Ron said. "But all my Hogwarts stuff, my wand, my broomstick, where is it?" "Locked in the cupboard under the stair, and I can't get out of this room." "No problem," said George from the forward passenger seat. "Out of the way, Harry." Fred and George climbed cat-like through the window into Harry's room. "You had to hand it to me then," thought Harry, as George took an ordinary hairpin from his pocket and started to pick the lock. "A lot of wizards think it's a waste of time knowing this soft of muggles," said Fred, "but we feel they are skill worth learning, even if they are a bit slow." There was a small click and the door swung open. "So we'll get your trunk. You grab anything you need from your room and hand it out of the Ron's whispered door. Watch out for the bottom stair, it creaks." Harry whispered back as twin disappeared onto the dark landing. Harry dashed around his room, collecting his things and passing them out of the window to Ron. Then he went to help Fred and George heavy his trunk up the stair. Harry heard Uncle Vernon cough. At last, panting, they reached the landing, then carried the trunk through Harry's room to the open window. Fred climbed back into the car and pulled with Ron from the bedroom side inch by inch. The trunk slid through the window. Uncle Vernon coughed again. A bit more, and checked Fred, who was pulling from inside the car. One good push. Harry and George threw their shoulder against the trunk and it slid out the window into the back seat of the car. "Okay, let's go," George whispered. As Harry climbed into the window sill, there came a sudden loud screech from behind him, followed immediately by a thunder of Uncle Vernon's voice. "That's Rudy Owl. I have forgotten Hedwig." Harry tore back across the room as the lighting light clicked on. He snatched up Hedwig's cage, dashed to the window, and passed it out to Ron. He was scrambling back into the chest of drawer when Uncle Vernon hammered on the unlocked door and it crashed open. For a split second, Uncle Vernon stood framed in the doorway. Then he let out a bellow like an angry bull and dived Harry, grabbing him by the ankle. Ron, Fred, and George seized Harry's arm and pulled as hard as they could. Yania, roared Uncle Vernon. He's getting away. He's getting away. But the Weasleys gave a giant tug and Harry's legs slid out of Uncle Vernon's grasp. Harry was in the car. He had slammed the door shut. Put your foot down, Fred yelled Ron, and the car shot suddenly toward the moon. Harry couldn't believe it. He was free. He rolled down the window, the night air whipping his ears, and looked back at the shrinking rooftop of Private Drive. Uncle Vernon, Aunt Putania, and Dudley were all hanging drumstruck out of Harry's window. See you next summer, Harry yelled. The Weasleys roared with laughter, and Harry settled back in his seat, grinning from ear to ear. Let Hedwig out, he told Ron. She can fly behind us. She hasn't had a chance to stretch her wings for ages. George handed the hairpin to Ron, and a moment later Hedwig soared joyfully out of the window to glide alongside them like a ghost. So what's the story, Harry? Said Ron impatiently. What's been happening? Harry told them all about Dobby, the warning he had given Harry, and the fears of the violet pudding. There was a long shocked silence when he had finished. Very fishy, said Fred finally. Definitely doggy, agreed George. So he couldn't even tell you who's supposed to be plotting all this stuff. I don't think he could, said Harry. I told you, every time he got closer to letting something slip, he started banging his head against the wall. He saw Fred and George look at each other. Why you think he was lying to me? Said Harry. Well, said Fred, put it this way. House elves have got powerful magic of their own, but they can't use it without their master's permission. I reckon old Dobby was sent to stop you coming back to Hogwarts. Someone's idea of a joke. Can you think of anyone at school with grudge against you? Yes, said Harry and Ron together instantly. Draco Malfoy. Harry explained he hates me. Draco Malfoy, said George, turning around. Not Lucas Malfoy's son. Must be. It's not a very common name, is it? Said Harry. Why? I have heard Dad talking about him, said George. He was a big supporter of you-know-who. And then you-know-who disappeared, and Fred craning around to look at Harry. Lucius Malfoy came back saying he had never meant any of it. Lord of Dung. That reckon he was right in you-know-who's inner circle. Harry had heard their rumors about Malfoy's family before, and they didn't surprise him at all. Malfoy made Dudley Dursley look like a kind, thoughtful, and sensitive boy. I don't know whether the Malfoy own a house elf, said Harry. Well, whoever owns him will be an old Wizardian family, and they'll be rich, and said Fred. Yeah, Mom's always wishing we have house elf to do the ironing, said George. But all we have got is a lousy old cow in attic and gnomes all over the garden. House elves come with a big old manor and castles and place like that. You wouldn't catch one in our house. Harry was silent, judging by the fact that Draco Malfoy usually had the best of everything. His family was rolling in a wizard hold. He could just see Malfoy strutting around a large manor house, sending the family servant to stop Harry from going back to Hogwarts. Also sounded exactly like the sort of things Malfoy would do. Had Harry been stupid to take Dobby seriously? I'm glad we came to get you anyway, said Ron. I was getting really worried when you didn't answer any of my letter. I thought it was Yerol's fault at first. Who's Yerol? Arrow. He's ancient. It wouldn't be the first time he had collapsed on the delivery. So then I tried to borrow who? Paul, Mum and Dad want Percy when he had met Perfect, said Fred from the front. Percy wouldn't lend him to me, said Ron, said he needed him. Percy been acting very oddly this summer, said George, frowning, and he has been sending a lot of letters and spending a lot of time shut up in his room. I mean, there is only so many times you can polish a perfect badge. You're driving too far west, Fred, he added, pointing at a compass on the dashboard. Fred twiddled the steering wheel. So does your dad know you have got the car? Said Harry, guessing the answer. No, said Ron. He had to work tonight. Hopefully we'll be able to get back in the garage without Mom's noticing we flew it. What does your dad do at Ministry of Magic anyway? He works in the most boring department, said Ron. The misuse of Muggles' artificial office. The what? It's all to do with bewitching things that are Muggle made. You know, in case they end up back in the Muggle shop or house. Like last year, some old witch died at her tea set was sold to an antique shop. This Muggle woman bought it, took it home and tried to serve her friend tea in it. It was a nightmare. Dad was working overtime for weeks. What happened? The teapot went berserk and squirted boiling tea all over the place, and one man ended up in the hospital with the sugar tongs clamped to his nose. Dad was going frantic. It's only him and the World Warlock called Perkin in the office, and they had to do memory charm and all sort of stuff to cover it up. But your dad, this car? Fred laughed. Yeah, Dad's crazy about everything to do with muggles. Our shed's full of muggle stuff. He take these apart, put spell on it, and put it back together again. If he raided our house, he had how to put himself under arrest. It drive Mum and Dad mad. That's the main road, said George, peering down through the windshield. We'll be there in 10 minutes. Just as well, it's getting light. A faint pinkish glow was visible along the horizon to the east. Fred brought the car lower, and Harry saw a dark patchwork of field and clumps of tree. We are a little away from the outside village, said George. Our trees start catch pole. Lower and lower went the flying car. The edge of brilliant red sun was now gleaming through the trees. Touchdown, said Fred, as with a slight dump they hit the ground and had landed next to tumble-down George in a small yard, and Harry looked out for the first time at Ron's house. It looked as thought it had once been a large stone figure pen, but extra rooms have been added there here and there until it was several stories high, and so crooked it looked as though it were held up by magic, which Harry reminded himself it probably was. 4 or 5 chimneys were perched on top of the red roof. A loop-side sign stuck in the ground near the entrance read the bureau. Around the front door lay a jumble of rubber boots and a very rusty cauldron. Several fat brown chickens were pecking their way around the yard. It's not much, said Ron. It's wonderful, said Harry happily, thinking of private drive. They got out of the car. Now we'll go upstairs really quietly, said Fred, and for Mum to call us for breakfast. And Ron, you come bounding downstairs going, Mum, look who turned up in the night, and she'll be all pleased to see Harry, and no one need ever know we flew the car. Right, said Ron. Come on, Harry, I sleep at the top. Ron had gone a nasty greenish color, his eyes fixed on the house. The other three wheeled around. Mrs. Wesley was marching across the yard, skirting chicken, and saw a short, plump, kind-faced woman. It was remarkable how much she looked like a saber-toothed tiger, said Fred. "Oh dear," said George. Mrs. Wesley came to a halt in front of them, her hand on her hips, staring from one guilty face to the next. She was wearing a flowered apron with a wand sticking a flowered apron with a wand sticking out of the pocket. So she said, "Morning, ma'am," said George, in what he clearly thought was a gently winning voice. "Have you any idea how worried I have been?" said Mrs. Wesley in a deadly whisper. "Sorry, Mom. See, we had to." All three of Mrs. Wesley's sons were taller than she was, but they cowered as her range broken over them. Bed empty, no note, car gone, could have trashed, out of my mind, with worry. Do you care? Never as long as I have lived. You wait until your father gets home. We never had trouble like this from Bill or Charlie or Percy. Perfect Percy, muttered Fred. "You could do with taking a leaf out of Percy's book," yelled Mrs. Wesley, holding a finger in Fred's chest. "You could have died. You could have seen. You could have lost your father. His jobs seemed to go on for hours." Mrs. Wesley had shouted herself hours before she turned to Ron. Harry backed away. "I'm very pleased to see you, Harry dear," she said. "Come in and have some breakfast." She turned and walked back into the house, and Harry, after a nervous glance at Ron, who nodded encouragingly, followed her. The kitchen was small and rather cramped. There was a scrubbed wooden table and chair in the middle, and Harry sat down on the edge of his seat. Looking around, he had never been in a wizard house before. The clock on the wall opposite him had only one hand and no numbers at all. Written around the edge were thinking like "time to make tea, time to feed the chicken," and "you're late." Books were stacked three-deep on mantelpiece, books with titles like "Charm Your Own Cheese," "Enhancement in Baking," and "1 Minute Feast." It's magic, and unless Harry's ear were deceiving him, he told old Ratio next to the sink had just announced that coming up was Witching Hearts with the popular singing sorceress Celestine Warbeck. Mrs. Wesley was clattering around eating breakfast a little haphazardly, throwing dirty looks at her son as she threw sausage into the frying pan. Every now and then she muttered things like, "Don't know what you were thinking of, and never would have believed it." "I don't blame you, dear," she assured Harry, dipping ate a nice sausage into his plate. "Arthur and I have been worrying about you too. Just last night we were saying we had come and get you ourselves if you hadn't returned back to Ron by Friday." Really, she was now adding 3 fried eggs on his plate, flying an illegal car halfway across the country. "Anyone could have seen you." She flicked her wand casually at the dish in the sink, which began to clean themselves, clicking gently in the background. "It was cloudy, Mum," said Fred. "You keep your mouth closed while you are eating," Mrs. Wesley snapped. "Maybe it's starving him," Mum said George. "And you?" said Mrs. Wesley. It was with a slightly softened expression that she started cutting Harry bread and buttering it for him. At that moment there was a diversion in the form of a small red-headed figure in a long night dress, who appeared in the kitchen, gave a small squeal and ran out again. "Minnie," said Ron in an undertone to Harry, "my sister. She's been talking about you all summer." "Yes, she'll be wanting your autograph, Harry." Fred said with a grin, but he caught his mother's eye and bent his face over his plate without another word. Nothing more, we said, until all four plates were clean, which took a surprisingly short time. Jimmy, I'm tired, yawned Fred, sitting down his knife and fork at last. I think I'll go to bed and you will not, snapped Mrs. Weasley. It's your own fault you have been up all night. You're going to dig on the garden for me. They are getting completely out of hand again. Oh, Mom. And you too, she said, glaring at Ron and Fred. You can go up to bed, dear, she added to Harry. You didn't ask them to fly that wretched car. But Harry, who felt wide awake, said quickly, I'll help Ron. I have never seen a Dignon. That's very sweet of you, dear, but it's dull work, said Mrs. Weasley. Now let's see what Lockhart got to say on the subject. And she pulled a heavy book from the stack of the mantelpiece. George Ron, we know how to dig a garden. Harry looked at the cover of Mrs. Weasley's book. And across it in a fancy gold letter were the words Gilderoy Lockhart Guide of Household Pets. There was a big photograph on the front of very good looking wizard with wavy blonde hair and bright blue eyes. As always in the Wizardian world, the photograph was moving the wizard, who Harry supposed was Gilderoy Lockhart, kept winking cheekily up at all of Mrs. Weasley's beam down at him. Oh, he is marvelous, she said. He knows his household pairs all right. It's a wonderful book. Mom fancies him, said Fred in a very audible whisper. Don't be so ridiculous, Fred, said Mrs. Weasley. She gathered pink. All right, if you think you know better than Lockhart, you can go and get on with it. And who betide you if there is a single genome in that garden when I came out to inspect it. Yawning and grumbling, the Weasleys shot outside with Harry behind them. The garden was large and in Harry's eyes exactly what garden should be. The Dursleys wouldn't have liked it. There were plenty of weeds and the grass needed cutting, but there were general trees all around the walls. Plant Harry had never seen spilling from every flower bed, and a big green pond full of frogs. Muggles have garden genomes too, you know, Harry told Ron as they crossed the lawn. Yeah, I have seen those things they think are genomes, said Ron, bent double with his head in the peony bush like a fat little Santa Claus with fishing rod. There was a violent scubbling noise. The peony bush shuddered, and Ron straightened up. This is a genome, he said grimly. Chirp me, squealed the genome. It was certainly nothing like a Santa Claus. It was small and leathery looking, with a large knobby bald head exactly like a potato. Ron held it at arm's length as it kicked out at him with his horny little feet. He grasped it around the ankle and turned it upside down. This is what you have to do, he said. He raised the genome above his head, jerked me, and stared to swing it in great circle like a lasso. Seeing the shock on Harry's face, Ron added, it doesn't hurt them. You'll just got to make them really dizzy so they can't find their way back to genome hole. He let go of the genome's ankle. It flew 20 feet into the air and landed with a thud in the field over the hedge. Pitiful, said Fred. I bet I can get mine beyond that stump. Harry learned quickly not to feel so sorry for Genome. He decided just to drop the first one he caught over the hedge, but the Genome, sensing weakness, sank it, Roser shoved it into Harry's finger and he had a hard job shaking it off until, wow, Harry, that must have been 50 feet. The air was soon thick with flying genome. See, they are not too bright, said George, seizing 5 or 6 genome at once. The moment they know the degenoming going on, they storm up to have a look. You had think they had learned by now just to spray out. Soon the crowd of genome in the field started walking away in the straggling line, their little shoulder hunched. Back said Ron as they watched the genome disappear into the hedge on the other side of the field. They love it here. That's too soft with them. He thinks they are funny. Just then the front door slapped his back, said George. That's home. They hurried through the garden and back into the house. Mr. Weasley was slumped in a kitchen chair with his glasses off and his eyes closed. He was a thin man going bad, and but little he had was red as any of his children. He was wearing long green robe with were dusty and travel worn. What a night, he murmured, pouring from the teapot as they all sit down around him. Nine red, nine, and old mud dunks. Fletcher tried to put a hex on me when I had my back written. Mr. Weasley looked a long gulp of tea and said, find anything bad, said Fred eagerly. All I got were a few shrinking doors, keys, and a kettle, yawned Mr. Weasley. There was some pretty nasty stuff. That wasn't my department. Oh, Mortlack was taken away for questioning about some extremely odd fairies. But that's community of experimental charm that, thank goodness. Why would anyone bother making door keys shrink, said George. Just muggle baiting, signed Mr. Weasley. Sell them a key and shrinking and do nothing to they can never find in when they need it. Of course, it's very hard to convince anyone because no people would admit their key kept shrinking. Well, insist they just keep losing it, bless them, they'll go to any length to ignore magic. Even if it is staring them in the face, but the thing our lot have taken in touching you wouldn't believe, like cars for instance. Mrs. Weasley had appeared holding a long poker like sword. Mr. Weasley's eyes jerked open. He stared guilty at his wife. Cars, Molly dear? Yes, Arthur Cars, said Mrs. Weasley, her eyes flashing. Imagine a wizard buying a rusty old car and telling his wife all he wanted to do with it was take it apart to see how it worked. While really he was enchanting it to make it fly, Mr. Weasley blinked. Well, dear, I think you'll find that he will be quite winning the law to do that, even if he maybe would have done better than tell his wife the truth. There's a loophole in the law, you'll find, as long as he wasn't intending to fly the car. The fact that the car could fly wouldn't. Arthur Weasley, you make sure there was a loophole when you wrote the law, shouted Mrs. Weasley, just so you could carry on tinkering with all that muggles rubbish in your shed. And for your information, Harry arrived this morning in the car you weren't intending to fly. Harry, said Mrs. Weasley blankly. Harry who? He looked around and saw Harry and jumped. Good Lord, is it Harry Potter? Very pleased to meet you. Ron told us so much about your sons flew that car to Harry's house and back last night, shouted Mrs. Weasley. What have you got to say about that? Did you really? Said Mr. Weasley eagerly. Did it go all right? I mean, he flattered as sparks flew from Mrs. Weasley's eye. That was very wrong, boys. Very wrong indeed. Let's leave them it. Ron muttered to Harry as Mrs. Weasley swirled like bullfrog. On, I'll show you my bedroom. They slipped out of the kitchen and down a narrow passageway to an uneven staircase which wound its way zigzagging up through the house. On the third landing, door stood ajar. Harry just caught sight of a pair of bright brown eyes staring at him before it closed with a snap. Ginny said, Ron, you don't know how bizarre is for her to be this shy. She never shut up normally. They climbed two more flights until they reached a door with peeling paint and small plank on it saying Ronald's room. Harry stepped in, his head almost touching the sloping ceiling, and blinked. It was like walking into a furnace. Nearly everything in Ron's room seemed to be violet shade of orange. The bed spread the wall, even the ceiling. Then Harry realized that Ron had covered nearly every inch of the shabby wallpaper with photos of same even 7 inches and wizards, all wearing bright orange robes, carrying broomsticks, and waving energetically. "You quit him," said Harry. "The Chudley Cannon," said Ron, pointing at the orange bedspread, which was embroidered with two giant black seas, and a spending cannonball, ninth in the league. Ron's school spell book were stacked untidy in a corner next to piled comics that all seemed to feature the adventure of maritime mix, the Mad Muggles. Ron's magic wand was lying on top of the fish tank full of frogs spawned on the windowsill next to his fat grey rat Scabber, who was snoozing in patches of sun. Harry stepped over a pack of self-shuffling playing cards on the floor and looked out of the tiny window in the field far from below. He could see a gang of gnomes sneaking one by one back through the Weasley's hedge. Then he turned to look at Ron, who was watching him almost nervously as though waiting for his opinion. "It's a bit small," said Ron quickly. "Not like that room you had with the muggles. And I am right underneath the goal of the attic. He's always bagging on pipes and groaning." But Harry, grinning widely, said, "This is the best house I have ever in." Ron's car went pink. Life had That's it for today. Thank you so much. Stay tuned for next chapter. Bye bye. See ya.